I don't think that purpose is relative. I mean, you're right that different people may find purpose and meaning doing things that are diametrically opposed to what other people think is meaningful. But I don't think anything goes. And I think there are constraints. In that sense, I guess I'm going to use Michael's phrase, although I certainly wouldn't call myself a Kantian. But I do think that there are, notice that how I said it, Kantian. But I certainly think there are constraints. So to begin with, there are biological constraints. There are social constraints, meaning that we are a social species. And a lot of discussions we have in society today is about the right balance between altruism and selfish interest and things like that. But in fact, at bottom, we are a species that dramatically depends, as you know, every individual depends dramatically on the interactions, on positive interactions with other individuals, so that this distinction between selfish interest and altruistic interest is actually artificial. It's a result of certain kinds of ideologies. In reality, we're all here together on the same boat, and we better navigate it together. So I do think that there is a variety of ways to cash out the idea of meaning, and they are, so there's no single answer to the question. There are a variety of meaningful lives. But there is also a variety of lives that appear to be meaningful, but in fact the people that are living those lives are in fact mistaken. I mean, you've given examples that are more difficult to parse because they're complex. There's a lot of variety there. But you know, sorry, but the Nazi life is not a meaningful life. Now the Nazi may disagree, but they're just wrong. And right, so. And if they don't accept it, then we just wage war against them to make them accept it. So I don't think that one can go full relativist on these things. There are certain forms of life that are clearly destructive to human society. They're clearly not, on average, bringing flourishing to individual members of that society. And therefore, I think they're mistaken. And in fact, a lot of the efforts of philosophers since the Greeks and Romans was precisely to try to figure out the best ways to achieve a eudaimonic life and then to teach others that might be under mistaken impressions about it. So I mean, the answer is complicated. There's not a single answer. It's not true that anybody who wants to say that is the way to live your life and that anything else is unacceptable, I think is a fool. But the same token, it's simply not the case that anything goes. A lot of things just don't go or shouldn't go, and we should oppose them.
But I think we can bring Kant in again here.
Oh, no.
Because Kant said, you know, there are two things, the starry heavens above and the moral law within. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm very glad you brought up the word value, because that's what we're talking about. What is the valuable life? Now, yeah, there are things that you do on a day-to-day basis which are value. You go to college to get a degree, to earn money and all of these things. But if we're talking about, you know, the big questions sort of thing, I want to say that I don't want us all to be Mother Teresa's. I think there's got to be a place for Aristotle too. In other words, what I want to say is I think the valuable life is surely one, for me as a teacher, interacting with my students. But it's also been, for me, very much the life of scholarship, which at a certain level, anybody who's a scholar or creative knows that ultimately, this is ultimately totally selfish. You do it for yourself. If you have to do it for yourself. You may say you're doing it for others, and to the granting agency you say you're doing it for others, but that's BS. You're doing it for yourself, and that's okay. So I really want to say that, yeah, meaningful life, but I want to see two poles, the starry heavens above and the moral law within. Kant.